over the last 20 years or more, there's been a societal shift towards a negative connotation to the word colonial and its different iterations. Whether you're talking about people of color, indigenous populations, or even whites that are of a younger age, that history and deeper history on the earlier colonial times has caused it to, it's tarnished the name, tarnished the brand. The pandemic and George Floyd's death spurred on a lay leadership summit meeting where we received feedback to encourage name change consideration. Can't lick my fingers to turn the page. And in June, the council voted on a motion and developed a task force. Part of that task force was a communication plan. We have been through phase one, where we announced the process, articulated the position of senior leadership, and created channels for initial conversation. Some of those channels you would know well. Meeting house conversations that we had, or excuse me, the courtyard conversations that we had for smaller groups, and not shown on the slide here, but numerous people took the chance to email in their thoughts on the name change email list. And now we're in phase two, deeper discernment. That being 4 different town hall meetings are scheduled, and I'll show you a timeline on these later on, and then also more courtyard discussions, wanting to keep a balance between small group and potentially larger group. And then phase 3 is the congregational vote. Official notice has been given for a special church meeting on January 10th. And that will be a time for final discussion and then a vote. Now, here's the council motion as it was initially drafted. I won't read through all of this because it's been well laid out on our website, etc. But there has been one revision to it, and that is the 4th point. After listening to people in the courtyard conversations and other conversations, we revised our process from a 1-step vote to a 2-step vote. That being that on January 10th, we'll be only voting on one thing, and that is whether or not to change the name of our church. And as you can see here, as you read through this, and skip to basically the last sentence, if the church by a 2/3 majority or greater votes to change the name, then a second special congregational meeting will be held at a later date to vote on a new name. It was thought to be better to de-link those 2 big decisions and phase them as we have. And then, as you see here, it's time for me to turn it over to Jeff Lindsay, our senior pastor. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And thank you for all who are willing to be here in person and for those who are with us via our modern technology. You know, I've been asked a few times in the last few weeks the same question that I've been asked over the last 7 months, and that is, if you knew what was going to happen back in February when you put your name in the ring, if you knew what was going to happen a few weeks later, would you still decide to be on that list as the possible next senior minister? And my answer has been the same as, yeah, I'm pretty dumb, so I probably would have said yes anyway. But the real answer is that I would have said yes, not because I felt like I have all the answers, or felt like I have all the tools, or felt like I was the right necessary person, but because I love this congregation, because I love you, and because I believe in a future. I believe there's hope for this congregation. I believe there's hope for us. And I believe that we don't have to just kind of hold on as long as we can. We can revitalize ourselves around a vision. When I was candidating for the position of senior minister, I handed out this handout during the town hall meetings. And it kind of outlined kind of where my enthusiasm for the future was. why I was believing this future, why I was believing there was a hope, and kind of the path that I believed we would need to follow in order to get there. My instructional word from the Lord came from Isaiah chapter 43. You know this passage, you've heard it before. It's basically, thus saith the Lord who makes a way. Do not remember the former things. I'm about to do a new thing. And the new thing will be so that my name will be praised. Those are my marching orders, thinking about the future of Colonial Church. That God was about to do a new thing. The answer to our future was not necessarily in the past. It was building on the past for the possibility of a future. That's why when I was describing kind of my vision for ministry, I kept using the word reform and realign, restore, revitalize and enliven, redeploy. And lastly, I said, and reimagine. Believing that God was not done with us, let's build a good thing in the future together. That was kind of my last thought as I thought about vision going forward. The one thing that I said was the reason I put my name in the ring to be senior minister was because I didn't think we had time to go do a national search, to try to get somebody once they're here up and running. And I felt like the time was now for us to mobilize as a congregation, to think about vision that before we have our core values help guide us, and to be missionally focused going forward, to be committed to the future. And we currently have a wonderful list of lay leadership. We have a wonderful staff in place, and we are committed to the future. We are already creatively trying to think about how we can inspire children and youth and families, how we can be more missionally minded, and how we can focus in our future. Unfortunately, 2 weeks into my time as senior minister, the pandemic broke out. And soon after that, we have riots in our streets. And so the church has to ask ourselves, not just Colonial, but the church has to ask, where are we in all this? And I thought, well, something that was going to need to be more slowly rolled out and slowly understood and slowly thought out is now right here. This may be the moment that we can use to kind of mobilize ourselves. And so as I thought about the possibility of a name change, or suggesting to our congregation about a name change, for me it was kind of like a three-legged stool that held up this idea of name change. One, and I've already kind of suggested a bit, it was, will the church appear tone deaf again in a major issue, a major concern of the society around us? Will we just kind of go about our business as usual, which has been an argument and a critique of the church over the years, not just Colonial, but the church. Will we respond? Will we care about the real issues that are happening on this? The second thought that I had was, this might be that place where we now can humbly submit ourselves to the future that God has for us. A lesson in humility that all of us can learn and continue to learn. Are we willing to even give up our name that has served us well tonight for the sake of the possibilities of the future for us? Will that teach us something? Will that help us better understand who we are and who we need to be that will then guide us forward? How we will humbly submit to the needs of the community around us, even to one another, to think outside the places where we normally think and normally go. To be open and hearted and open-minded to where God might want to lead us next. And then lastly, could our name be maybe more reflective of our current vision and mission going forward? Colonial Church, a pilgrim people on a journey together, journeying together. That made a lot of sense when I first showed up here 35 years ago. I wanted to be a pilgrim people. I wanted to be on a journey with like-minded people going forward. But we haven't talked about that for 20 years. It's not really kind of the way we think about ourselves, at least a large part of our congregation thinks about themselves. Some of them don't even know that understanding. And so, is this a time thinking about future, thinking about envisioning and rethinking and reconnecting and committing to the future of our church? Is this the time for us to say, let's rally behind a new name that will be more missional and be more clear about who we want to be going forward. And so those three ideas really have undergirded my enthusiasm around this. Now, trust me, I recognize the shock that somebody felt, some folks felt, the bewilderment some people felt, the exclusion that some people felt, and I'm sad for that. But our intention was good, to propose to our congregation some ideas around mobilizing ourselves for the future, a name change that would signal we are clearly not looking to the past. We're not going to continue to do the things that we've done in the past, hoping for a different outcome. We are really going to start thinking about how we can be focused towards their future and focused towards those who we want to invite to the party. I guess I just want to say before I close my thoughts is that I just want to tell you that there was no ill will here. There was no coup here. There was no attempt to kind of sneak something past our congregation. If you came to any of the town hall meetings that I offered when I was candidate for this, one of the things that I said over and over and over again is my desire was for us to become more congregational than we had been more recently. I wanted there to be more power in the hands and of the decision making of the congregation. I wanted us to be in more town hall meetings and church meetings because I wanted our ministry to be expanding that. We wanted people to be engaged, to be thoughtful about it, and give feedback and give direction, and vote for those directions. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and we're not able to do those kinds of things. So we're learning how to use technology better. We're starting to try to open up our church a little bit so we can get people here again, hoping for a future where we can get back to some new level of normalcy. We want this church to be the church it's been and meant to be. We want us to be following our congregational principles and our congregational heritage. And as far as I'm concerned, that will never change. So, us thinking about what God might want to do in our midst, this name change idea came to not only just to be a part of the congregation, but also give the marching orders to the staff. So let's get on with hearing from you. That's what we were here to do. So Sarah, why don't you give us some of the direction that we need to have so that we can do this well.
Great. There we go. Can y'all hear me in the meeting house? Yep, I see a hand raised, so that seems like a good thing. Okay, well, hi to everyone. So I just want to let you know a little bit of how we'll do this next section. What will happen is as we're doing our first hybrid, first of all, thank you to everyone for participating in this. We are learning some things even tonight that will help us with our next one. So thank you for participating and showing up. Since we're wanting to make it as equitable as possible and as much for those of us on Zoom and those in the meeting house to be able to engage congregationally and hear from one another and thereby, continue to discern the Spirit's movement. What will be happening is for those of you who are on Zoom, what I'm going to ask you to do is that if you would like to make a comment, that you would in the chat box for yourself, there's a little chat button. It looks like a kind of cartoon little talking box. Send a chat. You can send it directly to me. You can type your message. You can just say, I would like to speak, and I will put you in the queue to speak. And if you would like me to read a comment on your behalf, please type out your comment or question. That's for everyone on Zoom. So again, if you're on Zoom, please either just say, hey, Sarah, I'd like to be in the queue. Send that to me in the chat. Or if you have a comment you'd like me to read on your behalf, I will do that. For those of you who are in the meeting house, you received a piece of paper and a pen when you came into the meeting house. And what you can do if you look at your form, it asks you to fill out your name, if you're a member, and then if you would like to be in line to speak, you can check that box, maybe not surprisingly, so as to keep us as safe as possible. We're not going to have a lineup for the microphone in the meeting house. We'll just have one person at a time. And so you can just indicate your checkbox if you want to be in line to speak, Or if you want your comment or question read aloud, you can then fill that out and just raise your hand, kind of old style, church style, and be like, please take this, ushers. And then what will happen for those of you in the meeting house, my corollary in the meeting house is our senior deacon, who is Wendy Senior. And Wendy will be the person who will be keeping track of the queue for those of you who are in the meeting house. Just in order to ensure that everyone has time to speak, we also ask that you keep your comment or question to 2 minutes, and you will receive a 15-second warning from myself if you're on Zoom, or from Wendy if you're in the meeting house. And then if you have an additional comment or question, we'll put you back in the queue so you can say that again. If there's a particular question that you want addressed to, like Jeff or John or Cheryl, or I don't know who else, Madison, no, just like not me. You can also just indicate if you have a comment or that you would like a response to. But generally, this is just a way for us to hear each other in typical town hall style. If you're in the meeting house and you wish to speak multiple times, you would need a second sheet. So again, raise your hand if you need a new sheet after you've already spoken once, and you can get a new sheet for your comment and or question there. I think that is everything. I'm going to double check that just by pulling back up our share screen here to see. I think that's all the things I think I had. Yeah, so let's get started. We're gonna, the last thing I should say actually is that we are gonna go back and forth. We'll start here on Zoom. So if there is someone who has a comment or question that you would like to offer and you're on Zoom, go ahead and just send me a note and we'll get you in line there. And then otherwise, if you're in person, now is when you can fill out your comment card and then raise your hand if you want that. So anyone on Zoom who'd like to jump in with a comment? If so, actually I can see all of you. So you could just go like, you could wave to me and we can get you unmuted. Okay, Mary, go ahead. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You're going to have to unmute it yourself.
I can do that. The
Great.
question or statement that I have is, since we haven't been together in person, I haven't really heard the dialogue between those who are in favor or those who support and those who do not support this. Can you speak a little bit to what the concerns are and just what people are thinking?
Thank you for that, Mary. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. So Julie, as I do that, if you would then unmute your microphone and just take me off. And just as a reminder to those of you, that sounds like something John or Jeff or Cheryl could comment on, please just make sure to speak as directly into the microphone as possible. So for us who are on Zoom, the audio is a little muffled. So as clear as you can be into the microphone, that will be helpful for us. I'm going to mute myself and then go ahead and unmute Julie, please.
First of all, I'm hoping that Mary was asking that question on behalf of her membership as opposed to a staff member, because otherwise it looks like it was a set of questions. If you could see me, I'm joking, but you can't. I would say that the dialogue has been around maybe 4 major issues. One is kind of the difference between perspectives, and I didn't recognize that as being an issue, and I'm fully aware of there being an issue. Meaning, I've never heard anybody talk about the name having been a problem, and I know a number of people that have a name, and I personally have a problem with the name. I think the issue about the process has been huge, that people have felt like that the process was not done well, that it somehow was working outside of our usual congregational system. There has been the notion that this is being done, that it was already a done deal, that by the time that the congregation heard about it, that it was already a done deal, and that there was no possibility for there to be feedback or questions by the congregation. And then I think one of the other big issues is I think this as a congregation, we are exemplifying to a large degree kind of where we are as a country right now. We are divided around political issues and political lines, and I think this has reinforced some of that. Instead of us really creating an environment for people to be in dialogue, helpful dialogue, I think people felt like that they've been more protective of their own beliefs and values, and I think, which has made it hard for some folks to believe that this is still their church and they still are welcome. So I think those are some of the major things. There might be one or two others that I'm not quite thinking of, but I think that would be some of the major issues. And lastly, it's the most obvious one. Why do this now in a season of COVID when we can't be together like we had been in the past? Why didn't we wait this out? Why is it so urgent that we need to do this now? So those would be some of the issues, I think.
I'm muting that. Just for those on Zoom, just in case you were struggling to hear that, just to say that Jeff named that, for those I think who, in terms of hearing from different perspectives, I think for some folks, and we'll be rolling this out in our frequently asked questions and in some of the invitations for people to share their perspectives from within the community. For many, there's a sense of this should have happened a while ago. This is something they've been talking about for a while. And then Jeff was sharing that also for some folks who have had concerns or, just said, I don't know that this is the right thing. Some of the concerns that have been raised have been including the process whereby it happened. Is this the right time to do it? And there's one of the other ones that you just named that I'm not saying, Jeff. I apologize for that. The sound's a little muffled, so I wanted to restate a little bit. So we'll go from there. How about now, Julie, if you'll unmute in the meeting house, and then we can go to a question or a comment from the meeting house. Again, just make sure to get as close to the mic as possible. Sorry, Julie, I just muted you accidentally. Please do it again. Sorry, can you unmute again? I can't hear. Sorry, everyone. I'm trying to get Julie to unmute here.
Have served as a senior deacon, been on the church council, been on 9 committees, chaired the last fundraising capital fund drive here, which was 7 years ago. All 3 of my children have been baptized, confirmed, and 2 of the 3 have been married at Colonial Church. So, and Jeff buried my husband 8 years ago here in this filled sanctuary. He also was a very strong member of this church, and he loved Colonial. But I was totally taken back on the name change, I must admit, as were many of my fellow constituents, my Koinonia members. I've had a lot of people call me, talk to me, go for coffee with me, all kinds of things. So one of my questions is, was there ever any thought about delaying this important vote until the annual meeting? Because there are a number of us that go away to Florida, to Arizona, to other places, and might not be here. And will there be a paper vote?
I'm just going to can you hear me in the meeting house? Sorry, y'all. I was trying to.
Checked with our in-house parliamentarian, Annette Anderson, and, she is, very much in favor of that as the probably the safest way to proceed to make sure that everybody in fact does have a vote. So a departure from the way someone with your time and grade here has seen, but we think the best way to go. Now, before that, what was your question before that, leading up to that? Oh, yeah. Well, it could well be that the name change itself, if it's voted in, it could well be that the next phase of deciding on a new name, we will need to have another special meeting on that. So that could be another possible time to address this situation at the annual meeting. But what we see on council is the number of people who are saying you're moving too slow compared to the number of people who say that we're moving too fast. So we're just trying to strike a middle ground where there's good communication, where there's a chance for people to talk. And frankly, I don't think that, I think the general tone of it has been that we can't just shut down progress in the church because of the pandemic. And so that may fall on deaf ears, I don't know, but it's, as I once said to Jeff, I said, I don't want the darn virus to win. So that we're trying to stay highly functional as a church during this time.
Sorry, I thought they were done.
In terms of membership, we have a current roll of who we consider members that's been looked over within the last couple of years, actually the last year, with the exception of a small new members class that will be happening this month. We will go with our current membership list. That is all, it's already on record of who our members are. That will be a question that people will ask in terms of membership. So that paper ballot will go out to members that we have current addresses for, and that will be.
Okay, can you all, John, can you wave to me if you can hear me? Okay, great. So just for those again who are on Zoom, just to make sure you could hear, that was Carol Lee Randall, a longtime member and part of the Colonial Church community. And she was sharing both just for her community of friends and folks that she's known for a long time in the church. She and many folks that she knows were very taken aback on the name change. And just this really came out of nowhere. And I think it would be fair, Carol, to say from what you shared that there's a sense of concern, and particularly she voiced the question to which John and Jeff responded to, wondering if there was any thought about delaying the vote until the annual meeting in view of that many folks spend their winters in Arizona or Florida or the like, etc. And so she was asking about that, and to that, both John and Jeff responded and just shared some comments about that. An additional thing I would just note that I don't believe that I heard John or Jeff say is that it doesn't appear that COVID is going to be done by January or necessarily by April. And so I think one of the things, and this is where, again, thanks for everyone who's hanging in there with us as we're trying to figure out how to do this well tonight. We'll just, so we can improve this, so as to make sure that we can have as close to an experience of what it would be like if we were all able to be in the meeting house as we approach January 10th. And so, so now I'll go to comments. I'm not sure if, I'll just read the two comments that came through on Zoom, I believe. If for some reason, Andy or Greg, you're wanting to comment on your own, please send me a note quick and say that, because otherwise I'll represent your question. Let's see. So from Andy Garbers, he said, and to clarify, will there be a paper ballot or voting in person? That's what Andy had noted. And then Greg Mealand put in a comment here that he said, there is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or of taking the tranquilizing drug of gradualism, quoting MLK. So I think I'll go to the meeting house. John, if you want to comment on just the way that voting would happen on the 10th, and or where we're at in that process. So I'm going to mute myself, and then I'll ask you, Julie, to unmute yourself. And then again, John, just speak into the mic, and then we'll go for comment from you, John, and then we'll go to question or comment from someone who is gathered in the meeting house. Thank you for rolling with us here on this, everyone. Go ahead, John.
The current belief is that there will be one way to vote at the January 10th meeting, and that is by paper ballot. We don't have any planning right now that says we'll do a voice vote and paper vote. But as we reserve the right to get smarter every day, and that changes, we certainly will let you know, but it seems a little too cumbersome to try to merge those two methodologies.
Any questions here? There's no questions from here, Sarah.
So can you hear me in the meeting house again? John, can you hear me? Put up your thumb if you can. Oh, yep, you're waving. That's good. Great. Is there anyone on Zoom that has a comment that they'd like to offer, or a question, or something that you're wondering about that hasn't been asked, or just to share? And if you don't think of one tonight, you know, you do have 3 more meetings. I did receive a question here about if we had the vote in for Jeff by mail. That was not for some of you, you may remember that was this glorious pre-COVID land where everyone was in the meeting house, and we had that vote in person. And I will come to you next, Annette, because I think you're a very good person to comment on this. And it was for the annual meeting that we had an adjusted way that we did our annual meeting in view of bylaws, and then and in view also of just our parliamentarian, which is Annette. And I'm going to go to you, Annette, and I'll have you unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you see me? Okay. So we've been learning a lot in this COVID world, and we had the opportunity last spring for the annual meeting to figure out how to hold the vote without an in-person meeting. And we had 2 really important things we voted on after the wonderful in-person meeting where Jeff, where first we voted in a bylaw change, and then we unanimously elected Jeff as our senior pastor. You know, the next votes that came up, people may think they're not as important, but the annual meeting votes are really important. We elected the members of council. The other thing we did was we voted to allocate a portion of the Blessings Initiative money to be going out the door immediately. And one of the things that I believe we found we had a paper ballot, and maybe somebody who is closer to the counting of the ballots can remember the number of votes that came in. I think we had more than 300 people participate in the vote. And that vote was done in such a way that there was the opportunity for discussion on Zoom ahead of time. So I think we worked to develop a really good process. I also know that it kind of came out of the blue for some people that were changing our name, and it was sounding like a done deal. And, I think we've heard that there maybe were a few little missteps on the front end. And I appreciated very much Jeff's statement that there was nothing was being done with bad motives or in an underhanded way. We're all learning as we go. So I want to first of all thank the staff for bringing it to us that we need to engage in conversation, and whatever the result of it is, I really appreciate that we are following through with our core values, and we're wrestling with something that's hard. Change is hard. We are colonial, and they want to take our name away. It's not a us and them. We are a congregation. We're having conversation. I appreciate that they've done courtyard conversations. They're doing opportunities like this, and it's tough to discuss over Zoom. But we're doing the best we can with the tools that are available. So I hope you encourage people to participate in the ways that we can come together and talk. Personally, as I've wrestled with this, I can see where there would be some benefit to, considering a name that's a little more welcoming or a little more about our core values. You've seen in the community, many churches have moved forward and changed names, and we don't have to do it just because other people are doing it, but maybe there is a problem with our name. So I just want to thank the staff and the council for bringing forward tough questions. I appreciate everybody being open and listening for a tough conversation, and I encourage other people to engage.
Thank you so much, Annette, for your comment. And it looks like in terms of, is there anyone there in the meeting house that's wanting to offer other thoughts and commentary tonight? I just want to make sure. I think I just got a text from Julie that says it doesn't necessarily look like that. How about on Zoom? Is there anyone else who wants to offer a comment tonight? Okay, John is getting precipitously close to the microphone, which means I think that Julie, your battery just or something, and maybe the screen went into sleep or something. Carriers, your image is back. Did you have something you wanted to add in, or you're muted right now if you're wanting to talk, Tom. I'm gonna unmute you, or I have to ask you to unmute. You have to unmute yourself. All these things are happening. No, there you go. We can hear you.
No,
go ahead.
We're going to save our comments because it's very difficult for us to hear, and
yeah,
the audio is just not what it is on Sundays. So
yeah,
we'll be back.
And, absolutely. Okay. And when we get together at church, that will be very helpful.
Great. And thanks for your feedback too, because we'll keep working on this to help it be as best heard so everyone can participate. And yeah, thanks for that. There is a question, and John, as you go up to speak then, can you share with us, let us know just the names of everyone who is present in the meeting house tonight? Both, I know there's some folks from council, but then also some additional members in the community, because I think you all can see us.
So, okay, we're going to do our best, and carriers, I'm so sorry that the audio is not working very well. In the meeting house right now, we have Jean McDonald, we have Susie Holderness, we have Kara Lee Randall, and we have Jeff and Suzanne Pope. We also have 4 members of the council. We have Wendy Senior, our senior deacon that you met. We have 2 staff members, Julie Dover, Jessica Kruger, and myself. So that's who's here with us.
I actually do have another question that was asked for.
Yes, who's here? Welcome, William.
Can't hear. Sorry, they're going to turn me on in a second, maybe. Okay, can you all hear us again? John, can you hear me? Can you wave? Okay, great. So we did have another question. Madison asked if she could comment. So Madison, go ahead. Just say who you are and then go ahead with your question.
Hi, my name is Madison. I'm the student ministry associate here. As someone who's not super familiar with congregationalism, I just have a question. I know a few people have touched on there being some missteps and just having issues with the process of the name change in terms of our congregational roots. And just from someone who's not from this denomination, I'm just curious to know what those missteps have been, because to me, coming from different denomination, just kind of feels like, you know, there was this invitation to have a conversation about it. And I want to understand, like, for people who think that we need to approach it in a different way as congregationists, like, what would the different way be? Does that make sense?
It made sense to me. Let's see, Jeff or John, do you want to comment, or is there someone else? Jeff is rounding his way to the microphone, so I will mute myself.
That's a great question, Madison. Let me try to summarize some of the feedback that I've gotten from some of our membership. I think as Kara Lee mentioned, as she came to the mic, I think she mentioned that it kind of came out of the blue. I think that was a general sense that there should maybe have been more discussion, or more should have kind of leaked out, and there should have been more of a general sense that there was this question that was in the air. And I think that has been one of the sense of misstep, is that where did all this come from? I mean, we haven't really heard that much about it at all, and now we're at a point of talking about changing our name. I think that sense led kind of to some frustration, disappointment, some sense of misstep, or process being kind of out of sync. I think there was a sense that the church council was working independently, that it really wasn't reflective of a larger church's thoughts and opinions, and that it was just really the council's opinion. But there's that sense, but the reality is that anyone can bring a proposal. The council can bring it, a member and the staff can bring in the way that we do our governance. It just happened to be the council had brought the idea. I think the sense that it felt like it was a done deal by the time people heard about it, made it feel that way. Made people kind of go to that sense, go to that conclusion. So letter of the law, in terms of our handful of pages called our church governance, our bylaws, is a proposal was offered. It was the sense of the proposal that was offered that it would go to discussion by the congregation and then eventually go to a church vote. The sense was that's the step they're going, but it felt differently to a portion of our congregation. And I think that's where the notion of the misstep. Now, I would guess that if there were others in the meeting house tonight or on Zoom, many of the folks that have represented some of those positions are not with us tonight, so I'm trying to do my best to kind of represent them. Some of them have some interpretations and some opinions around it, which is true congregationalism right there. The fact that we would have different ideas and different opinions around some of the same things. And I think also the world we're living in right now also creates a lot of suspicion around people's motives, people's ideas, people's opinions about some things. And so I think that is the feeling of there has to be some missteps here because it just doesn't feel right. I get it. The world doesn't feel right now. To Ann Carrier's comment, you know, we want to be back in the meeting house. We want the church to be like it was, maybe even better than it was, but in terms of how we actually carried out life together. So there are probably some other specifics, difference of opinions about how the council should operate, different opinions about how the moderator should operate, difference of opinions of how the staff influences council, difference of opinions around kind of the reality of the way the world is operating and our perceptions of the world. So all that mixed together, I think, came from people's strong opinions about whether or not they were missteps. I don't know if that answers completely what you're asking, Madison, but that's what I'm going to offer. If there's someone in the meeting house that would like to share more from their perspective, that'd be great. Or someone on Zoom who would like to weigh in on that. I think it would be a helpful conversation and we can still have some time. So.
We have another comment from the Sarah, go.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to pause for a second. I think Jeff did a good job of generally summarizing from my seat, but I'm wondering if there's anyone else on Zoom in view of what Jeff just asked, if there's anyone else who wanted to offer a comment. Elaine, related to that, do you want to go ahead, Elaine? Okay, go ahead and unmute yourself, Elaine. Oh, and just before while Elaine's doing that, just before you comment, actually, just for those on Zoom, let me actually just do a quick, let's see if I can do a quick, brief summary of what Jeff said. So Jeff basically was responding to Madison's question about, for those, you know, who are saying, hey, wait, like, this doesn't feel like congregational process or polity, and both what was some of what is some of the content of that concern for folks who have voiced that, and Madison's particularly asking that as someone who's new to congregationalism, and so Jeff was just naming, I think for some folks that there's a sense of both how maybe it was a conversation that hadn't been heard before. It came out of nowhere for some folks within the community, a sense that the council brought it to the congregation. Some folks have said, you know, that's too activist on behalf of the council themselves. And the thing that I would just say is, maybe not shockingly, is that our community, the responses have actually been all over the place in terms of, you know, even in approaching this, that in terms of like our bylaws and process, absolutely. And I think Annette, you had said this, there was deep intent to follow, you know, a deeply congregational process and polity. But I think, you know, part of that is us also having different like longevity and background in this particular expression of congregationalism, you know, that's led to some just folks having different, you know, feelings and opinions about what would be the right way for us to do congregationalism together. But I'll go to Elaine to actually, that's, you know, my somewhat summary of what Jeff was saying with a couple additions, and we'll go to Elaine to actually comment more. Go ahead.
I can imagine how disturbing or concerning it could be, especially for longtime members who are used to the name Colonial. It means so much to our members. But this actually started, the idea started percolating over 2 years ago during the visioning process. And especially as we were clarifying our values, the key value of welcome, the discussion around that really surfaced the concern that our name might not be as welcoming as we would like for the kinds of people we have been eager to attract to our congregation: young people, young adults, young families, and especially diverse communities. And so that it's been percolating for a while. So for some of us, this isn't as new, but for others, perhaps, you know, those years did not have much conversation. And so for some, we've been waiting for a conversation, and for others, maybe this is very new. And I just appreciate the way in which it is being rolled out now, and the steps. It seems very deliberative, very respectful, and seeking to really use the congregational way of conversation and dialogue and discernment to come to some kind of conclusion about it. I also want to give a plug for Christian Wynn's class that I think is an excellent parallel process for understanding the roots of congregationalism, and helps in this whole discernment process about understanding where we've been and who we are, and maybe how we want to present ourselves to the broader community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elaine. I had another comment here. Greg Meelan had asked, of the comments that have come in since this process started, basically, what have we been hearing? Are there more positive or negative, kind of the percentage? And I'm going to ask Elgin, because Elgin has actually, he's on the name change task force and has, you know, been intentional about gathering responses. And I know your face tells me that I seriously put you on the spot, but I'm going to do that anyway, because you can comment however you would like then. So Elgin, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I would say we've had 150 different responses, and that it's 80-20 in favor of a name change, or suggesting names, or making relatively positive comments.
Thanks, Elgin. Again, obviously, that's not representative of everyone in the whole community. I think it is important for knowing, though, that is everyone, all those responses are from within the community, though, in terms of just knowing that there are very different perspectives held by those of us who are members of the community. And part of why we wanted to host spaces like tonight is just to continue to offer opportunities for us to hear one another, because I think that's one of the things that I've loved about congregationalism, and I'm, you know, really drawn to, is it's a sense of that each of us as people who before Christ, you know, seek God and the Spirit's leading and guiding within us in our moral conscience as individual believers, but then we come together to be able to discern how the Spirit collectively is moving in our midst. And so it's that the I becomes part of that we of discernment, and in the listening. And so we wanted to not just have those comments be things that we're sending emails about, but to continue to create conversational space for us to wrestle together as we're wrestling with God, you know, discerning God's Spirit's movement in our midst. So that's where the comments that have come in that way. Again, it's not reflective of everyone, but we want to keep having the conversation. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for Elaine for your additional comments that you had. I don't have any additional comments that are listed, I think. I'm getting random chats, and so I'm making sure that I'm not missing anything, though. Jeff, I'm going to mute myself because you're standing right there, and I'm going to go to you. So go ahead.
Well, one of the things I'd just like to respond to that question of what has been the numbers in terms of the comments. And one of the things that I would just like to encourage those who might be picking this up on Zoom later this week or throughout the week, days to come, that's not necessarily reflective of the overall understanding of this idea from the church. It just means that's the numbers of the people who have actually responded. I would just strongly encourage the network that you are a part of, the people that you know, the people that you've been talking to, that to make your position known, to make their ideas known, to let us know what they know, what they feel and believe. Because I know that some of the folks that have made kind of side comments to me, they're not necessarily reflected in those numbers. And but I'd say if we really want that to be a reflection of our kind of overall feeling of the church, then you got to make your name and make your voice and make your opinion known. So this is what I would add that.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to make a comment, and I hope it doesn't come across as overly defensive, because I've certainly had my own consciousness raised as we've gotten feedbacks we've gone along here. I don't mean just tonight, I mean over the last several months. But I have there's four of us from council that are in the room tonight. Mary Fisher, Kathy Pinsky, Cheryl Southern, Vice Moderator, and myself, plus Jeff and Sarah, who are at most of our council meetings. And I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, respond to the concern that has been voiced that this is a kind of a political coup that is heavily politically driven. We don't talk politics at council, and that's why I'm mentioning the other council members that are here. And if people are truly concerned about that, please reach out to your favorite council member and ask them, does council feel overly political? Because we don't have those conversations. I do not know the politics of the rest of council, and I doubt that they know mine. But it hasn't been like some leftist overthrow. That's a little harsh, I know. But so we feel like we're doing the right stuff. It's not been perfect. We've all been on a learning curve through the pandemic and how to respond. And George Floyd's death lit the match right here in Minneapolis in their backyard that set the world on fire. We felt like we needed to react in some way, shape, or form to what does that mean? What are we about as a church? So I don't want to say, I won't say that was all a knee-jerk reaction to George Floyd. I would say that it might have been a tipping point to some of us to one degree or another. But we certainly don't stand alone as an organization to feel like we need to make a statement on race, et cetera, as we go forward as the church, any more than a Fortune 500 business does or other churches do, et cetera. So we're like I say, I don't want to sound overly defensive. I've actually appreciated the comments that have come in that have challenged us to say, what are you guys doing? This is not good congregational polity. It's forced me to have my own learning curve on just exactly what that means. It's caused me and I think others on council to, especially when people like Carol Lee or others folks who have been here. By the way, thanks again for the Monday meditation. That was spectacular, Jeff and Suzanne. Most of us on council do not have 20, 30, 40, or 50, or 60, or 70 years of membership in this church. So we have had our consciousness raised to how strong that brand is in your minds. And to be honest with you, some of this boils down to us saying the longer you've been here, probably the greater the sacrifice that you would be making. You would be voting for this, but it's frankly, it's probably less about our internal love for that name than it is for the external concerns that the name raises. So I promised myself I wasn't going to make speeches here because I don't want this to be a bully pulpit. But I just, when the question was asked about what was objected to, et cetera, I just wanted to offer those comments. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just let me do my version of an attempt at a summary. A couple things that John noted was that, you know, he says, you know, he wanted to be intentional about not being defensive, but also to allow all of us an opportunity to hear a little bit from his seat. That, you know, he wanted to say, first of all, I think intentionally that, you know, so this question of kind of, is this about politics, or is there a lot of politics embroiled in the council? And he said, you know that there's really a sense and a heart of leadership and of wanting to be intentional as the council about inviting us into this, you know, into this conversation. And he said one of the things that he's, you know, realized is that I think this is part of what we've been seeing and experiencing, is that you know, for many of you who've been in this community for a long time, there's a way that there is a co-creation of what Congregationalism expressed in this particular context, like how we do Congregationalism as our church community. And you know, so John also was acknowledging a sense of learning curve and you know, realization. I think this is one of those opportunities where both through Christian's class and prayerfully and hopefully through this process, that we have an opportunity collectively to redecide and recovenant together in terms of what Congregationalism looks like in our context and how we want to live that out into the future together. And that would be something, I think that would be, you know, really a lovely and beautiful thing. Because, for instance, I do have an experience. I didn't grow up Congregationalist, but I taught at United Seminary and have spent some time in that context with the United Church of Christ. And that there are different ways to express Congregationalism and to live that out, and even recognizing some of the stories that I had heard of the past. I was grateful, actually. I filmed the Monday meditation, so I was able to sit with the popes and like hear some of their perspective on how Congregationalism has played out. But that, I think that's what we're trying to live into, is what does it look like in our time, and how can we then co-create that together now? Because those things they weren't codified in that way in terms of a written thing in our bylaws or additional documents. And so again, in wanting to bring this forward, there was a sense, then this is like I'm just speaking from my seat, that I thought, oh, hey, you bring this forward and then the congregation will talk about it, we'll pray, we'll discern, and then we'll vote. And then all of a sudden very quickly realizing like, oh, wait, not everyone has the same understanding. And there's pieces of how, as a church, we've done Congregationalism that I personally wasn't aware of. And so I think I'm now interpreting you, John, but I think John was saying, you know, just that sense of both learning, but I think too, there's an opportunity for us to continue to then live out what does it mean for us to be the church and to be this church as a congregational community into the future. And so I think we're grateful for the opportunity to keep working on that together. I think that's sort of what you said, plus some additional footnotes. Let's see, anyone else on Zoom here who has a comment? Let's see, Tom, are you wanting to unmute? Go ahead and unmute if you want to unmute. You did the Zoom lean forward. Is it coming through? Can you see that little microphone button? Is it gonna allow you to do it there? There you go, got it.
No, we didn't have anything to add.
Oh, okay. You did the lean forward. So I'm like that, you know,
I was leaning
teacher who
forward.
you barely raise your hand and I'm like,
No, didn't have my hand up.
okay. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So let's go then. There's nothing I think left at this moment. You know, we do have 3 additional meetings. So if you realize, those of you on Zoom, that you have another comment or thing that comes up, you can come back to our next ones. And so with that, John, I'm going to go to you and ask you to kind of just gather us back together for our final time.
Okay, is that slide up, Sarah?
She's working on it.
Okay, just briefly, next steps. And hopefully you can read that on your screens, but if not, don't worry, this will be posted on the website as well. But starting on the far left with tonight, October 13th is our first town hall. And if you look above the line, you'll see that there are dates for a total of 4 town halls on that slide. And underneath it, the graphic there represents courtyard conversations, some which will be Zoom, others, weather permitting, would be outside. And there are 5 of those scheduled with the dates next to them on the bottom. We also would be offering up some community commentaries from other leaders in the local community here, and attempting to get a balance on those commentaries, and offering up some form of online forums where people can send their thoughts into a website, into the website. And then, of course, the ongoing congregational class that Christian is teaching. All of that leading up to the January 10th meeting in the Meeting House, which will be the final phase and will include discussion, but the vote would be turned in or mailed in via paper ballot at the end of that. Jeff is just telling me that for the January 10th meeting, we can host up to 100 people in the Meeting House. So an expansion. So any other comments or questions before I ask Wendy Senior to close this in prayer? If not, Wendy, thank you. And thank you all for being with us tonight.
Dear God, thank you for being with each of us tonight. Thank you for being with everyone who holds this church close to our heart. Please be with us, give us peace, give us respect as we listen to each other. And please remind us that you're here with us and you're going to guide us through the whole way. Thank you, Lord, for everything and this church, the people, and who you've made us be. Amen.
Thanks, everyone.